What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Chuds BBQ. My name is Bradley Robinson, and today I'm going to show you how I made these beautiful, delicious, smoky, barky, tender, sweet bacon burn ends. Coming up. This is some pork belly. Pat it dry. Picked this up from my friends over at Porter Road. They've got some really nice bellies. And as you can see, this isn't a very big piece, and that's because if I make too many of these, I'm gonna eat too many of these, and then I'm gonna poop my pants. So, limiting myself from the get-go. Nice and meaty, although there is a lot of fat on this side, so I may try and take this down a little bit. Again, trying to look out for future Brad here. But other than that, not really gonna do much to this, except put it on cure. And to do that, quite simply, I'm going to get the weight of this pork belly, which is sitting at 1.135 kilos. And I'm going to do 1.5% of our cure. And what I've got here is the bacon cure I made in my bacon making tutorial from a few months back. In that video, I made a big batch. This thing was full, and I've been using it over the last few months every time I need to make bacon. But simply enough, this is some white sugar, some kosher salt, pink curing salt, and some other aromatics. Highly recommend making a big batch. It really makes making bacon a lot easier, and it lasts forever. So now we're going to just measure out 17 grams, which is 1.5% of the weight of this pork belly. That way, we know we're not going on with too much cure, and this thing will be over salted. And typically when making bacon, I'm usually a 2 or 3% cure ratio to meat kind of guy, but because we're going to be putting extra rubs on these things and eating them in big chunks, I'm going to cut back on the cure a little bit so they're not overpowering and too salty. Because you know, when it's sliced super thin, it's fine. But in a big chunk form, like a burn end, we don't want it to be too powerful. And there we go, 17 grams of our cure. Make sure it's coated as evenly as possible, and we're good to go. Into a vac seal bag we go. Yep. And be sure to get any residual cure that may not have made it onto the fork. And we're gonna get it sealed. Ooh. Rise. There we go, perfect seal. Beautiful. Now into my fridge this goes for the next few days. 4 days later. Our pork belly is looking nice and cured. Now again, we didn't use as much cure as we normally would for making bacon, so it's not feeling nearly as firm as it traditionally would, but as we can see, it's looking a little more red, a little more firm, and should be perfect for our bacon burn ends. But first things first, I'm gonna give this a rinse in the sink under some cold water to get rid of any of this extra cure that may be on the exterior so this doesn't come out too salty. Beautiful, nice and clean. Gotta love that meat to fat ratio. Let's fire up the pit. And on the pit we go. Got a small bed of charcoal in there, a couple of dense logs. That way we get a lot of smoke. We're gonna cold smoke this bad Larry for, I don't know, just a couple of hours really. And I'm not really gonna do a true cold smoke. I'm thinking about probably hovering around the 225 area just to get this thing up to 150 degrees internal temp while making sure it gets nice and smoky. Because we are gonna smoke these again, so smoke flavor is not as big of a concern as it would be with regular bacon. So we'll check back in a little bit. And just like that, a couple hours later, this thing is looking nice and smoky, reaching an internal temperature of around 150 degrees, and our pork belly has now become cured and smoked bacon. So now into a plastic bag this goes to cool overnight to let that smoke penetrate deep into the meat, and we'll pick this up tomorrow. And again, you don't have to let this rest overnight or cool down. You could easily cut into this right after you're done smoking it. By letting it sit in that bag, it's just gonna allow that smoke to permeate. And also, it's a lot easier to cube up when it's chilled, which is in fact the next step. So simply enough, make these whatever size you like. You want them to be bite-sized unless you're gonna make a fancy dish or something, but I bet some mini ones would be pretty cool too. Put it on a baked potato or something. For me, typical burn end size, little 1x1 inch cube, but these will likely shrink up a little bit, so keep that in mind. But when it comes to a big bite of bacon in your mouth, I think smaller would be better than larger, generally speaking, because these are going to be pretty flavorful. Looking pretty good to me, though. I love making bacon. It's been a pretty bacon-heavy year here on Chuds BBQ. Nothing wrong with that. And there we go. Gonna pop these into a shallow pan. Now we could easily just throw these on the pit just like this, but I think we need to bust out a quick little rub. Starting with some good old-fashioned chud rub that I'm gonna cut pretty heavily with some brown sugar. On sale now at shopchuds.com. because this bacon is already probably pretty salty, we don't want to add too much more salt to the mix. So I'm going to do 2 parts brown sugar, well, mostly 2 parts, 2 1 part Chud rub, which should give us a nice balance of sweet, peppery, and savory. Beautiful. And because we're making bacon burn ends, it would be rude of me not to give a big shout out to Mr. Travis Heim at Heim Barbecue, the originator of the bacon burn end. Heim Barbecue, a few locations up in the Fort Worth region. I've been making these for years, and I've had them many times. Very tasty stuff. And the process I'm following is very similar to what he did with Matt Pittman over on Meat Church, so if y'all want to see how the man himself prepares this dish, you should go check out that video if you haven't already. But you know what? What's not to like about a bacon burn end? Just the name alone. Sounds pretty good to me. I'm going on pretty heavy with this rub. Again, it's got a very low salt content at this point, so we don't really need to worry about it. And we want to get a nice glaze, get some nice color on there. And that is looking pretty good to me. And also, to follow suit, the way they do it at Heim is they usually put these on sheet trays, but since it's already in this little bucket here, we're gonna just leave it in this. So, let's throw these on the pit. I got this pit rocking about 275 degrees, and that's where we're gonna keep it for this entire cook. And the benefit of this pan is as all the fat renders down, these are just gonna start sitting in their own fat, and they're gonna get nice and tender. All that sugar will melt down, and they'll basically end up sitting in the pork bacon fat syrup. Oh, it's gonna be great. Check back in a little bit. It's about 3-4 hours later, and I think it's time to check in on these little bacon burn ends, shall we? Ooh, that looks hot. Gotta love that. And I must admit that I took these very far. And that's because chewing on unrendered pork fat is one of my least favorite things to do. And I really wanted to cook these down so they're not only super tender, but also so they're nice and sticky and looking just, oh, beautiful. I did flip these over one time throughout the process to make sure they got even browning all the way around. And these are looking just beautiful. Little nugget of happiness right there, folks. And just look how much fat rendered out of this. It smells so good, nice and sweet, nice and sticky. Time to pull these out and let them cool down a little bit. Boop. I suppose we could leave them in here, cool down in the fat, but they might get a little bit greasy. And on this wire rack here, they'll be able to drain off extra fat, and they'll cool down a lot quicker too. Ooh, smelling good. They definitely shrunk up quite a bit. And these are reading probably 210 on the inside, to be honest. I really did cook them for a while because that's how I like it. They're starting to get a little crispy on top where they weren't submerged, and I'm a fan of crispy bacon. If I was doing regular pork belly burn ends, I may not have taken them this far, but these are bacon burn ends, so I wanted to try and get some nice little texture on there. But that's the real beauty of a recipe like this. You can take them out at various different times and test them and see what you like. I did that. I've already had a few. And I decided I wanted to go for ultra bark, ultra tender. And you really can't go wrong, because if someone looks at these and go, those look burned, you say, yeah, they're burn ends. Make them feel like an idiot. All right, we're gonna let these cool down and then we'll dive on in. I mean, would you just look at it, folks? Bacon burn end mountain. Ah! I gotta dive in. I gotta say, folks, I love making burn ends. You can really do whatever you want, whether they're savory, sweet, sticky, barky. They cook up really quick. And the bacon burn end really does make a lot of sense, especially for pork belly, because by curing it and removing some of that extra moisture, making them a little more dense, and then cooking them like this, nice, hard, and fast until they really come out looking like little chunks of barbecue bacon. Ah, I gotta go for it. Oh, ah, ah. That was just a bite of happiness right there. The flavors are all right there. You know, the saltiness is perfect. It's definitely not overdone, which is something I was concerned about this entire time. But that 1.5% brine ratio I did, seasoned these perfectly while still curing them enough to be considered bacon. And that sweet rub cooked on nice and dark, very sticky. It's just a really good bite. I mean, what's not to like about that? Oh, it's like candy plus bacon plus smoke. You could literally serve that as the dessert and no one would be mad about it. Oh, the fat. Look at that sticking together. The fat really is perfect, because that's my biggest complaint with pork belly burn ends a lot of times is it's a pretty quick highway to the diarrhea zone because of all the fat that you're drinking, basically. But by curing it and then rendering it out as far as I did, it's very pleasant to eat. It's not nearly as heavy as it could be, and it's just, oh, succulent. So good. Wow. Wow. You know what? I'm going to break my own rules because this one is staring at me. We're going to do an official taste test a little bit early. I swear she can tell by my reactions when she knows that she's gonna love something, because every now and then she just goes crazy. But ooh, nice and tender, nice and juicy. Oh, nothing wrong with that, folks. Oh, ah, the sweetness is perfect. Damn. Sure, it takes like a whole week to make this very small pile of food, but you know what? 100% worth it. Ooh, little crispy bite. I might even just put this into strips next time, because these little end pieces that are real thin got nice and crispy like bacon. Oh, it's got that rendered bacon taste. Go figure. Oh, Love it, love it. Remember at the beginning of the video when I said I'm using a very small pork belly so I can't eat too many of these? Right now I'm thanking my past self because I'm gonna eat all of these and I'm gonna have a horrible day tomorrow, but right now it is so worth it. So smoky. Love it. Tell you what, you go to a holiday party with a big pile of these, if you get an entire pork belly, you know how many of these you could make? Infinite. Bring them to the Christmas party, you'll get a raise. I guarantee it. But without further ado, folks, I think it's time for the official taste test. Alright, y'all, that is it. That's how to make some absolutely fantastic bacon burn ends. You know, this really is a bucket list cook for anyone who considers themselves a grill or smoking enthusiast because it brings together two of barbecue's best categories, right? Bacon and burn ends. And it makes a lot of sense that you're seeing these things pop up at barbecue joints across the nation because they really are fantastic. And although time consuming, they're incredibly easy to make, very hard to mess up, and I highly recommend you give them a try very soon. But that being said, if you enjoyed this video, let me know by hitting that subscribe button, let YouTube know by dropping a like on this video. If you give this recipe a try for yourself, be sure to tag me on Instagram at Chuds BBQ. I'd love to see what y'all are cooking. Big shout out to all the Patreon members. Thank you for supporting Team Chud and allowing me to keep making all these videos. And until the next time I see you, please go cook something outside. Peace!